In recent weeks, the technology world has found itself at the center of rumors that only a few years ago would have seemed like pure science fiction. It all began after a series of statements made by NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang during closed meetings with investors and representatives of the world's largest technology corporations. According to information from several analysts, as well as reports published by leading Western media outlets, NVIDIA may be in the final stages of creating the first next-generation hybrid computing platform in history, combining the company's traditional graphics processors with elements of quantum computing. If this information is confirmed, we are not simply talking about a new product or another generation of artificial intelligence accelerators. We may be talking about a fundamental transformation of the entire global technology industry. Over the past 20 years, humanity has become accustomed to computing power growing gradually. Every new processor became faster than the previous one. Every new generation of servers made it possible to train increasingly sophisticated AI models. However, in recent years, the world's largest technology companies have encountered a problem that many experts refer to as the computation wall. Creating the next generation of artificial intelligence is no longer as simple as increasing the number of chips. Building another data center is no longer enough. Adding more memory is no longer sufficient. The complexity of modern models is growing so rapidly that even the most powerful supercomputers are beginning to approach their fundamental limits. This is precisely why the world's largest corporations have spent years investing billions of dollars in quantum technologies. But there is one problem. Despite the headlines and frequent claims of breakthroughs, a fully functional quantum computer capable of solving real-world practical problems better than traditional machines still does not exist. Many prototypes demonstrate impressive results in laboratories but remain extremely unstable. They require extremely low temperatures, highly sophisticated cooling systems, and enormous computational resources for error correction. This is where, according to many analysts, NVIDIA enters the picture. Over the past several years, the company has methodically built the infrastructure for the age of artificial intelligence. Virtually every major AI model today is trained using NVIDIA hardware, from the largest American laboratories to Chinese technology giants, from startups to government research centers. NVIDIA graphics processors can be found almost everywhere. This has given the company a unique advantage. It has become more than just a chip manufacturer. It has gained insight into which computational problems remain impossible to solve, even with the most advanced supercomputers available today. That is why the rumors surrounding a hybrid platform have generated such a strong reaction. According to discussions within the industry, this is not a traditional quantum computer in the usual sense. Some reports suggest that NVIDIA is attempting to create an architecture in which conventional graphics accelerators perform the majority of computations, while quantum modules are used only for tasks where they can provide a dramatic advantage. To put it as simply as possible, today's supercomputer can be compared to an army of millions of extremely fast soldiers working in parallel. A quantum computer, on the other hand, resembles a system capable of simultaneously exploring an enormous number of possible solutions to a single problem. Each approach has its own strengths, but when combined, they create an entirely new level of capability. The most interesting aspect is that NVIDIA itself has significantly changed its rhetoric regarding quantum computing in recent years. Whereas company representatives once stated that practical quantum machines were still decades away, their statements have now become noticeably more cautious. Many analysts noticed that during several public appearances, Jensen Huang began speaking about hybrid systems as a technology of the near future. For the market, this can mean only one thing: the company sees real potential, and if that is indeed the case, the consequences could be enormous. Today, the largest artificial intelligence models require hundreds of millions of dollars to train. Some experts suggest that the next generation of systems approaching superintelligence could require computational resources whose costs are measured not in millions, but in billions of dollars. Even for the world's largest corporations, this is becoming a serious challenge. But imagine a situation in which the most computationally demanding tasks are delegated to a quantum coprocessor. In that case, The training process might not accelerate by mere percentages or even several times over. For certain types of problems, the speedup could reach tens, hundreds, or even thousands of times. If NVIDIA truly succeeds in creating such a system before its competitors, the company will gain something no corporation in the history of modern computing has ever possessed: control over humanity's next computing platform. Many compare the current situation to the emergence of the internet. Others draw parallels with the invention of electricity. But some analysts believe the scale of potential change could be even greater, because this is not simply a new technology. It is a machine capable of accelerating the creation of every other technology: medicines, new materials, energy systems, robotics, military developments, artificial intelligence, and much more. In essence, it represents a universal accelerator of scientific progress. This is why the development of quantum computing is being closely monitored today, not only by corporations but also by the governments of the world's largest nations. Washington understands perfectly well that the country that first obtains a truly functional quantum infrastructure could gain an advantage comparable to the creation of nuclear weapons in the middle of the last century. It is therefore not surprising that the United States government has spent several years actively restricting exports of advanced chips to China. On the surface, this may appear to be an ordinary trade conflict. However, many experts believe the real reason runs much deeper. The United States is trying to preserve its leadership in what may be the most important technological race of the 21st century. And if NVIDIA has indeed come close to creating a working hybrid quantum platform, the significance of these restrictions becomes completely clear. What is at stake is not merely the semiconductor market. What is at stake is the future of the global economy, and perhaps the future of human civilization itself. But if all of this really happens, then the main question is not how powerful NVIDIA's new computer will be. The main question is what happens after it appears. Because history shows an interesting pattern. Virtually every revolutionary technology was initially perceived as just another technical achievement, only to completely change the structure of the world a few years later. That happened with electricity, it happened with the internet, it happened with smartphones, but quantum computing potentially belongs to an entirely different category. Many scientists believe it is not just a new technology. It is a technology capable of accelerating the development of all other technologies at the same time. Imagine a situation in which creating a new medicine takes a few weeks instead of 10 years. Today, pharmaceutical companies are forced to model billions of chemical interactions. Even the most powerful supercomputers spend enormous amounts of time performing such calculations. A quantum system could potentially analyze these processes on an entirely different level. That is why many experts believe that the first real breakthroughs following the arrival of quantum computing may occur not in artificial intelligence, but in medicine. We are talking about treatments for diseases that have been considered too complex for effective treatment for decades. Some researchers even suggest that quantum systems could significantly accelerate the development of therapies for certain forms of cancer, neurodegenerative disorders, and rare genetic diseases. Of course, this does not mean humanity will suddenly defeat all diseases, but the pace of progress could increase so dramatically that medicine would literally enter a new era. However, medicine is only a small part of the picture. NVIDIA's real interest is connected to artificial intelligence. Over the past few years, the world has witnessed an unprecedented race among the largest AI companies on the planet. Every few months, new models appear. They become smarter, faster, better at understanding context, and capable of analyzing images, video, and speech. But behind every such improvement lies one enormous problem: training costs. Each new generation of models requires increasingly greater computational resources. Some experts believe that within a few years, the industry may face a situation where further scaling becomes economically impractical, even for the world's largest corporations. That is why many researchers have begun searching for alternative development paths. And this is where the quantum factor reappears. If even a portion of the tasks associated with training neural networks can be transferred to a hybrid quantum platform, the capabilities of artificial intelligence could begin growing far faster than most specialists currently expect. Some analysts already call this scenario the second AI explosion. The first explosion was the era of large language models. The second could be the era of quantum artificial intelligence. What makes this particularly interesting is the fact that NVIDIA occupies a unique position today. The company supplies hardware to virtually all of the largest AI developers. It understands the needs of the industry better than many competitors. It knows which computations are the most expensive, which tasks require the greatest amount of resources, which limitations are beginning to hinder the development of new models. In effect, NVIDIA has the opportunity to design a quantum platform not in theory, but around the real demands of the market. That is why some investors already view the company as the leading contender for dominance in the next technological era. But the more powerful a technology becomes, the more questions arise about security. For decades, nearly the entire digital economy has been built on modern encryption methods. Banking systems, government databases, military communication networks, online stores. All of this depends on mathematical problems that modern computers solve extremely slowly. However, one of the most well-known characteristics of quantum computing is that certain forms of encryption could become significantly more vulnerable to such systems. That is why the governments of the world's largest countries are already preparing to transition to new cryptographic security standards. Washington fully understands the potential consequences. If one country is the first to obtain a powerful quantum platform capable of solving such problems faster than everyone else, it would gain an enormous advantage in intelligence gathering and cybersecurity. In essence, this could represent a new form of technological weapon. That is why an atmosphere resembling the beginning of the space race of the last century is already forming around quantum development. The United States is investing billions of dollars. China is investing billions of dollars. The European Union is launching its own programs. Japan is expanding funding for research centers. And South Korea is accelerating the development of national projects. Every major economy in the world understands that losing this race could result in decades of technological lag. That is why any news connected to NVIDIA triggers such a nervous reaction in international markets. If the American company has truly moved close to a working hybrid platform, it automatically strengthens the position of the United States in global technological competition. In effect, NVIDIA's success becomes part of a broader strategy to preserve American leadership. But there is another aspect that is discussed far less often: robotics. Today, the entire world is talking about the emergence of humanoid robots. Companies around the globe are creating machines capable of walking, carrying loads, performing household tasks, and interacting with people. However, the true potential of such systems is still limited by computational resources. The smarter a robot becomes, the more data it must process in real time. Environmental recognition, action planning, speech analysis, motion control, and object manipulation. Each of these tasks requires enormous computational power. That is why many specialists believe that quantum technologies could one day become the foundation of the next generation of autonomous machines. Imagine a robot capable of analyzing millions of possible actions almost instantly. A robot that makes decisions far faster than current systems. A robot that learns new skills tens of times faster than existing models. If such capabilities are combined with next-generation artificial intelligence, the consequences could be enormous. That is why some futurists believe that quantum computing could accelerate the arrival of the age of mass robotization, an era in which intelligent machines become a normal part of everyday life. At the same time, however, new risks also emerge. History shows that every technology can be used for both beneficial and harmful purposes. Quantum computing is no exception. The military agencies of the world's largest nations have been closely monitoring this field for many years. Faster data analysis systems, accelerated simulation of new materials, development of advanced energy technologies, improvement of autonomous systems. All of these areas have not only civilian significance, but also strategic importance. Therefore, many analysts believe that the arrival of the first truly effective quantum platform could become an event that changes the balance of power between nations as dramatically as the emergence of nuclear technologies once did. That is why NVIDIA is attracting such an extraordinary level of attention today. The discussion is no longer simply about a company that manufactures chips. It is about a potential architect of the next technological era. If the rumors prove to be true, the coming years may go down in history as the moment when humanity took its first real step toward next-generation computing systems. Systems that until recently existed only on the pages of science fiction, and are now gradually beginning to become reality. But perhaps the most remarkable thing is not the technology itself, but how rapidly the attitude of the world's largest corporations toward quantum computing is changing. Just a few years ago, most technology executives preferred to talk about quantum computers as a prospect of the distant future. Estimates of 20, 30, or even 40 years were common. Many specialists believed that humanity would first run into fundamental physical limitations before it could create a truly stable quantum machine. However, over roughly the last 2 years, the rhetoric has begun to change noticeably. More and more industry representatives have started using very different language. Instead of talking about the distant future, they began speaking about the coming decade, then the coming years. And some experts have even started suggesting that the first commercially useful quantum systems may arrive much sooner than was assumed only recently. That is why the discussions surrounding NVIDIA are generating such intense interest, because the company has never been known for making bold promises without a serious technical foundation. On the contrary, many investors consider Jensen Huang to be one of the most cautious and pragmatic leaders in the technology industry. That is why every statement he makes today is analyzed almost word by word. Some insiders claim that NVIDIA has already formed dedicated teams working on the long-term integration of quantum computing into the company's existing ecosystem. Of course, there is no official confirmation of such reports, but the very existence of these rumors demonstrates how seriously the market is taking the possibility of NVIDIA's quantum future. Particularly interesting is the scenario in which the company succeeds in combining its future AI systems, supercomputers, and quantum platforms into a single infrastructure. In effect, this could mean the creation of a new digital ecosystem on a planetary scale. Imagine a network of next-generation data centers. Conventional computations are handled by graphics processors. The most complex tasks are automatically routed to quantum modules. Artificial intelligence systems coordinate resource allocation. All components operate as a single organism. Such an architecture could fundamentally transform the global data economy. Today, virtually every major corporation depends on cloud computing. Tomorrow, those cloud platforms could become quantum-powered. That is why many analysts believe the real battle will not be over selling individual computers, but over controlling the next generation of infrastructure. Whoever creates such an infrastructure first will gain an enormous advantage. That is precisely why governments are watching these developments so closely. And this raises perhaps the most interesting question of all. What happens when such a system stops being an experiment inside a laboratory and begins operating 24/7 on real-world tasks for the world's largest corporations? Many analysts believe this moment could become a new turning point for the entire digital era. Today, the largest artificial intelligence models require enormous computational resources and weeks of continuous data center operation. But if NVIDIA's hybrid quantum GPU architecture truly manages to perform part of these computations in a fundamentally new way, the pace of AI development could accelerate dramatically. Imagine a situation in which training a new AI model takes not months or weeks, but just days or even hours. Companies could build far more complex digital systems, governments would gain tools for real-time economic modeling, and research institutions could simulate experiments of a complexity that is currently considered practically impossible. That is why many experts already describe quantum technologies as the next major technological battleground after artificial intelligence. It is not surprising that NVIDIA is currently attracting such intense attention. Investors closely follow every public appearance by Jensen Huang, analysts dissect every new company statement, and technology media regularly discuss the possibility of the first truly useful quantum accelerator. And if even part of these predictions turns out to be correct, NVIDIA could gain an additional business domain comparable in scale to the AI chip market. At the same time, concerns are also growing. The more powerful computing systems become, the more questions arise about safety, control, and regulation. Who will govern such technologies? Which countries will gain access to them first? And could this lead to an even greater technological divide between global powers? There are no clear answers yet. However, one thing is certain: the race has already begun. NVIDIA, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, and dozens of research centers around the world are investing billions of dollars into quantum development. That is why the coming years may become some of the most important in the history of modern computing. We may be only a few steps away from the moment when quantum computing stops being a scientific experiment and becomes a real-world tool capable of reshaping the global economy. And if NVIDIA is indeed the first to successfully combine the power of its GPUs with fully functional quantum computing, it could become an event remembered in the same way we remember the rise of the internet, smartphones, or artificial intelligence. Perhaps a new chapter of the technological revolution is already beginning, and its consequences will be felt for decades to come.